vision in action. You left lifelong fulfillment, vision in action. Live.
Well, good morning, and welcome to another edition of Vision in Action Live. I'm Jim Boswell, your host. I'm the author of Lifelong Fulfillment, Take Charge of Your Life, its companion website, and this podcast. Just as a reminder, on Vision in Action Live podcast, we focus on individuals leading self-directed lives and the expert knowledge and solutions that it takes to facilitate individual personal development. So to do this, we bring you experts in lifestyle and every discipline that could conceivably inform your thinking about your journey toward lifelong fulfillment. Without further delay, our guest today is Ms. Paula Wilson. She's a multidisciplined artist. She's the co-founder of MoMAZoZo and Carrizozo Artists-in-Residence program, and just recently author of Toward the Sky's Back Door, which I hope we're going to talk about a little bit. She has obviously extensive art exhibition experience, including such displays at Denny Gallery, Fabric Workshop and Museum, Trellis Art, Emerson Dortch, Tamarind at the University of New Mexico, Ryan Lee Gallery, the New York Public Library, Studio Museum of Harlem, Princeton University Art Museum, and Wingate Studio, just to name a few. So welcome, Ms. Wilson. We're just so excited to have you on Vision in Action Live today.
Thank you, Jim. It's lovely to be here.
Great, great. If there's anything in your introduction that you think my introduction that you think I might have missed, that you think is relevant to our discussion, feel free to add that in. But one of the questions we want to start with is, you've obviously developed a full lifestyle in art. And I think to folks, that's a very interesting thing to do. And so we want to understand how you did that, how you came to it, some of the speed bumps along the way, things that you liked. Starting out, how did you know you were an artist?
I was lucky to go to an art camp when I was in middle school called Interlochen, which is, I grew up in Chicago. And I can chart that experience really is what made things click. I was trying to go for theater, but all the theater classes were full. And my mom, I feel like our parents are so often the people who understand the artists within, or the kind of our true passions if we maybe don't see it. And she encouraged me to take visual art classes.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this incredible summer also with the other students that I was there with. One of them is my friend Martha Friedman, who is now a very accomplished artist in New York. And it's amazing that that friendship has lasted all that time, but so much about it was about the other artists that I was with, hanging out with at the camp. And we had some really good teachers. So that's one sort of clear trajectory point that really kind of launched that interest.
Interesting. Yeah. And so I'm assuming that carried forward into, schooling and that sort of thing.
Yes, once after returning to this camp and then taking art classes, all art classes I could in Chicago. I took some classes in the Art Institute. And one of the things, and this maybe speaks a little bit to your prefacing that we'll talk about some of these speed bumps, but I'm dyslexic. So for me, finding art and that passion as a way to express myself really felt in line with sort of the way I see the world. And particularly, I'm drawn to doing printmaking. And in printmaking, you have your plate and then you have your print, and it's a mirror image. It's an opposite. So I think that the way my brain works really fits with this reversals that happen in printmaking, and the kind of way you work backwards to front, my dyslexic mind is like, oh, I get this. I could jive with this.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And you've done the printmaking. I noticed for a fact that, I've been exposed to your work and I've seen you do paintings and you've done things with fabric. You've done, I think you do block prints and that sort of thing as well. So it's not like just one thing, it's a whole spectrum of activity. Is that the growth component, or was that you were trying out different things?
I think it's something I've always done. I don't exactly know why. Maybe there's something about being biracial and kind of wanting not to have this singular one narrative that's dominant and going forward. As you said in the introduction, I'm kind of a quintessential multimedia artist, work in many different disciplines. So printmaking, the various types of printmaking, painting, I do video, and then often collaborate also with my husband, Mike Lag, who's a woodworker and kind of has an inventor's brain. So my work just goes all over the place. And I think that that's something that is can sometimes be unappreciated in terms of people who are trying to market me, or my gallerists potentially wish that I would consolidate my styles and representations. But I think it's one of those strengths where I have kind of endless energy for new things in a way that really fuels my practice.
It sounds like you appreciate the variety also of it.
Yes, that's exactly right. Variety is such an asset, I think, in our lives, and for me and my work, it's something that I've embraced.
Right. I had heard once upon a time that the creative functions like art and other things like that can sometimes suffer if you're too narrowly focused in that you sometimes expose yourself to getting stuck, and that the variety helps prevent that, in that you're doing things and you're dispersing some of your energies. Does that ring a bell?
Absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't I wouldn't put having a block, an artistic block. I mean, you have writer's block, but artistic block is not, I mean, knock on wood, but that's not really me. I'm always able to find something to make and something to be moving forward with. And it never occurred to me that maybe it's that kind of diversity in my practice that allows for that, but that could be a really good kind of answer to that.
Right. And subject matter wise, do you maintain that kind of variety across subject matters, or do you focus in one particular area and then move to another? How does that work?
Yeah, I think I go through periods where there's certain subject matter that's really gravitating to. One example would be the mutualistic relationship between the yucca plant and its sole pollinator, the yucca moth.
Mhm.
One thing that we've maybe mentioned, I don't think we've even mentioned that we both live in this town, Carrizozo, New Mexico. I hope I'm not outing you, and your fans will know where to find you, but it's this incredible town in the middle of the south central New Mexico, and it's a population, I think it was 946 in the last census. Is that right?
Maybe plus one or two.
Right. It's hard to say. So that's this locale is a huge inspiration in my work. So just to say all that the yucca plant is the state flower of New Mexico. And what I learned about this mutual relationship that it has with a moth, this little white moth that's its sole pollinator. Did you know that about the
Yes.
young?
Yes.
Yes. And when I learned about that relationship, it just opened so much up for me. It was this unseen relationship of care and reciprocity that was sort of out at work in the land in a way that I had been unable to see or hadn't seen. And so that became a huge subject matter that I still find kind of fueling me. I also think that the form that my work takes is hand in hand with the subject matter. And so I make these very large figurative pieces that are quasi self-portraiture, and that's another, so figuration in general is another subject that I continue to work with.
Right. Well, I've been to a couple of your gallery sessions here locally, and I have to say you do some really big things where you need a stepladder, and well, rarely do I see anything small.
Yeah, I know it is. It's things have really been, yeah, expanding. And I've in the past I have done like little tiny, it's almost as if I can only work tiny or giant, and that in between kind of comfortable uh size eludes me sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. How big was one of your big installations? Was it as much as 25 feet tall?
This is so within an installation, I did a large figurative piece that was 30, I think it's 35 feet wide and 25 feet tall.
That's really huge.
So did it in these sections, these I think 3 by 3 foot sections, and then that gets kind of tiled together.
Wow, interesting. Yeah. So you do a lot of travel to do this. I know you sort of developed a routine, and uh, tell us about how that goes, because that's an interesting lifestyle. You travel a lot, your shows a lot. That must be really fun to do, but it sounds like a lot of work too.
Yeah, it takes a while to prepare for a trip and then to land once you get back in, at home for me. But I do find that kind of fuels my life. It's again this idea of having diversity in your life and multiple perspectives, and I think location is the same way in that, especially living in this small rural community, it feels very necessary to broaden my horizons to travel. But there's no place I'd rather be than home. I mean, I really love it here and love the community. And then we also, as you mentioned, have this artist in residence program. So we bring people into the community, and that, is a way to travel without having to travel because you're interacting and having conversations with people who are coming from such different places.
And how would you describe what goes on at MoMAZoZo? That's such an experiential thing. It's kind of different.
Yeah, right. You kind of have to come and experience it. I like that. So MoMAZoZo is an arts organization that my husband and I founded back in 2010. So it's open. Anybody's welcome to join on Fridays from 12 to 1. So it's a brief window, but we have been consistently doing this for 16 years now, or yeah, 16 years. So at MoMAZoZo, it's a variety of activities. You never know what's gonna unfold, but some of our staples are the glass repurposing smashing game where you bring your glass bottles to MoMAZoZo, and because there's no glass recycling in town and not much in the state in general. And we have a target, this kind of bell, and you have to throw it into this loading dock pit. And ideally, you only get points if the bottle breaks and smashes. So it's very cathartic. You get that built up frustration coming out. And then sometimes we did recently is tumbleweed races. So you can either bring your own tumbleweed or find a tumbleweed around, and we put a ribbon around it so you can mark your tumbleweed. And then you set it out and you see whose tumbleweed reaches the finish line, which is the end of the street, in time, because Carrizozo is a very windy location, so it can service games such as that.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. Indeed. And so I think as an adjunct to that, you also took over a historical section of the town of Carrizozo.
Yes, we bought, let's see, 3 buildings. One was the old Cibolo Hotel, and one was originally the Ford Garage, and then became kind of a microbrewery for a spell there, and then the Lyric Theater, which originally was the Crystal Opera House. And these 3 buildings are in various states of dilapidation and disrepair. They're all adobe, and they're incredible spaces to work and welcome people into. And we kind of think of ourselves as stewards for the last kind of hospice care of some of these buildings, because they're they're kind of yeah, been abandoned since 1975, some of them. And so it's kind of a labor of love, but one that, yeah, feels really generative, like they give back so much to us.
They do indeed. And this, just to let the audience know, Carrizozo is an old railroad town, and so we have a lot of old buildings like that on a main drag called 12th Street, and you're right in the middle. So yes, they're pretty, and it's nice to have them around.
Yeah.
So how's life going on art? What's on the table for you these days? What are you looking forward in the next year or two? Anything?
Well, yeah, as you mentioned, I had an exhibition that launched at Skidmore College in Saratoga Springs, the Tang Museum, and they produced a catalog. And so have this book out, which I can show you, Paula Wilson, and then the back is the title, Towards the Sky's Back Door. And so we're traveling and doing some book signings and sharing the book with people. So that's definitely something on the near horizon right now. And then I'm also an artist in residence at the University of New Mexico and in the Art and Ecology department, through the Art and Ecology department. And I just finished writing a chapter for a book called Coexistence, Biodiversity in New Mexico. It's going to be a beautiful big book. And that was kind of I told a story of the yucca and the yucca moth, and kind of joined it up with my love relationship with my husband and moving out to Carrizozo. And so been spending some time writing, which is sort of a new activity for me to be doing. So those are some of the things cooking in the fires.
Yeah, yeah. So if I were a youth thinking about art as a lifestyle and a profession and that sort of thing, do you have any comments for that particular group? We're trying to address, youthful interests and trying to help people, arm them with resources early on. So your perspective might be of some real value to them.
Yeah, it's one of those kind of roads being an artist. It's like I wouldn't wish it on anybody, and I wish it for everybody. So it's like both. And Mike and I have been teaching in the Carrizozo school this month. We're doing 3 art classes in February every Thursday, and that's just been so great to feel that connection to this town and to teach locally here. So I think that for me, the biggest asset to my kind of career as an artist is my friends, like my network of other creatives, and keeping those bonds strong. And I think that that's something that we really learned in the pandemic is that you can kind of form your own groups of people over Zoom or these or video chat and meet with them. And that's something that I do regularly with a couple different friends of mine, like because maybe they don't live here, maybe your friends, you know, that you met in high school or college aren't with you, but that you could set aside some time to get together, and that most of the kind of accolades that I've received, I can chart back to friends, fellow artist friends, more so than I met this person at a conference and I, you know, was there a big curator and I reached out to them or something. It's usually more that network. So keeping that network strong and reaching out to your friends, your fellow friends, I think would be my biggest piece of advice.
Okay, networking. How about the inspirational side of it? Is there techniques that you employ to keep that really lively for yourself?
Well, for me, it's the natural world is definitely where I get so much inspiration. And if I do feel like things aren't flowing well, just the simplicity of taking a walk and being outside, I think is, you know, a lifeline that's always there for us. That and taking a shower. I think those two things like all of a sudden I have an idea, you know. And just the rest component, you know, if you're just always grinding and forcing it, things don't happen. And so taking those moments of where you're not even seeking inspiration, you just say, I'm just going to turn this off, then
Right.
all of a sudden it shows up. It's like there's room for it.
Well, you know, some professions, of course, are fairly structured, and some are regarded, maybe art's a possibility, as being less structured. And I wonder if you'd care to comment on that. It seems to me there's structure you have, but it's more maybe loosely defined and something, you know, you bring as a tool to your profession. Uh, but you know, if you're on the engineering side, which I'm more acquainted with, structure is a very strong part of what you're doing. And of course, we break it down into little pieces so as to be able to define, do this, and they're typically very sequential as opposed to a lot of things moving in parallel. How does that work in your experience for you?
Yeah, and so just to ask you, is it your workflow that's very structured or the output, like it as with the engineering type of brain for you?
I would say that the structure that fits what the discipline is that I'm trying to do actually creates a mindset about how I think about things and how I carry that forward. And once I'm acquainted with that and know it works successfully, then I take the better parts of that and I can replicate that. But I don't go from that kind of an environment to where I'm out doing a full-on brainstorm session with little or no rules, but trying to generate some inspirational observations. And so I find processes tend to influence the way people do it, maybe not how they arrive at the same solution, but maybe the way they work toward it.
Yeah, that's so that just thinking about that, it's actually this kind of process in your mind that is setting up the structure for the way in which you unfold a problem or a task.
Right.
And I appreciate that positing that art is maybe more of a Wild West mentality or something that, anything is possible. I will say that my husband and I keep a very regimented schedule, and kind of flow of the day. So while that might not necessarily be the same as the way in which you think through how to work on a given artwork, there's a parameter of temporality and a consistency of practice that I know I'm kind of showing up for art making at these times and kind of ending at a given time every day. That's so we get up, we walk to the studio, we do a shift, we come back at the same time for breakfast, and then we return back and generally close things down around 4 o'clock, and we wake up really on the early side, with the sun. So yeah.
Well, that kind of reminds me, I mean, one of the psychology things that's very much in vogue over the last 25 years is this concept of flow, or being in the zone, so to speak, when, your goals and your progress all mesh together at a pace that just comes naturally. And people like that tend to be able to ignore the clock. They tend to be able to really sink in quickly on what they're trying to accomplish, and it just happens for them. And those of us on the outside of that particular flow, their personal flow, are sitting there and saying, wow, how does he do that? Or how do they accomplish so much in so little time?
So you think that there's different personalities that are flow personalities, or
I don't know that I would want to credit it to personality, because we're all essentially different. But the concept that the psychologists come up with is that when you know your self-defined mission, and you know how you feel about things and what you want to accomplish, that after you start working on that, it gets easier and easier, and your focus gets better and better, even if it's things like, going out there and saying, okay, well, what am I going to do next? It influences all parts of the process. And I think to some extent we see that here, because we have an artist community, and we see some of those people who are really doing great things, and it just seems to come so naturally, right?
yeah. Yeah, I think that I can think about when I was back to your question about being a young artist, when I was in college, that I kind of dropped out of college because I thought, "Ugh, I don't know what, like, I'm on this trajectory of being an artist, and I don't really even know what that's like." So I dropped out of school, and then I can just picture myself right now as we're talking, being in this room that I had, my kitchen table, trying to make some art. And I couldn't work for more than 20 minutes before I just felt like I was going to go crazy or something. I didn't have that flow. It's something that I built over time, just to be able to work for hours on end on a given piece. So when I'm working in the studio, it feels that flow is accessible. And then I was talking about writing recently, and that felt more of a struggle, something that's not in my toolbox. And so I would set a timer to work for 20 minutes and then take a 5-minute break and then another 20 minutes. And that that really helped, because I would get to that 15-minute point and be like, oh, how much time is left? I'm struggling or something. But then that last 5 minutes was usually like the best part. And then the timer would go off and I would like, oh, I don't really want to stop, but I would, because then it felt good to take the break, and then I was ready for that other section.
Right, right. So, uh, any new plans on the horizon? Are you going to be doing more exhibits this year?
So I am working on a two-person exhibition with my friend Iris Hugh, and she and I have a show that's going up in Virginia in January. So
Mhm.
that's my next main exhibition that I'm working towards, and that's going to be at the University of Virginia.
Wow, that sounds fun.
Yeah,
Is
it's
Iris
great.
from Virginia? Is that?
No, we have a mutual friend who's a curator
Oh, okay.
there, who actually was an artist in residence out in Carrizozo. And so and it's interesting, this collaborating and working, we're actually working on artwork together,
Mhm.
and we have just such good flow, speaking of flow, with each other. So excited for that.
That's great. That's great. Well, good. Thank you so much for all of this. Help us identify where the audience can reach you, learn about your book, things like that, if you would.
Absolutely. So you can find me on my website, paulajwilson.com. My social media handle is Paula Lights, so Lights, Paula Lights. And then I'm going to be doing a couple book signings in New Mexico. If you are in that area, I have one at Tamarind Institute on March 13th from 5 to 7, and then also one in the Carrizozo Library on March 15th, which is a Saturday, and that will be from 1 to 3. And then we're planning more book signings in New York and in April, and then also in LA at the Printed Matter Book Fair, which is in the middle of May. But if you go to my website and in the news section, I'll have all these things listed.
Show us your book again one more time.
Oh yeah, thanks for asking. So this is a silk screened cover, which feels very in keeping with me. And here are the end pages. So it's
Oh,
richly
I see.
illustrated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks good.
Yeah, thanks for asking, Jim.
Well, thank you. And best of luck on the book. I think it's going to be great to see it out there in the public domain.
Yeah, well, congratulations on your book, and we got multiple authors in Carrizozo now.
Yes, we do. Well, listen, we're going to wrap it up with this, and thank you so much. And we'll check in later and see how the kickoff on the book did. Okay?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. And that's our episode for today. I want to thank our guest, Ms. Paula Wilson. It looks really exciting what she's doing with her book and her art. Thank you for attending Vision in Action Live today, and I hope you've got some insights that you can use. Our future episodes will look at things like psychology, divorce, Renaissance in retirement, and other expert solutions. So stay tuned, check them out when they get recorded. Our podcasts focus on interviews with subject matter experts and people leading self-directed lives so that you can see exactly what you can do to accomplish your personal development goals. Check out the newsletters, podcasts, and extensive reference materials at lifelongfulfillment.com. All of that is there for you, and it's free for your use. You'll find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and your favorite podcast channel, and KFRAD Internet Radio. I'm Jim Boswell. You can reach me at jim@lifelongfulfillment.com. So until next time, what did you learn today?
Lifelong